hogy ismét itt találkozhassunk.
We last welcomed the French president in 2007, so it was really time for us to meet again.
Időjárási okokból.
Usually,
Akkor a legszebb Budapest.
the month of May is a nicer period to visit Budapest, given the weather. That is when the city is at its best. But I think that for political purposes, December is just as well. And of course, the journalists are curious to know how the relationships are between Hungary and France and between the two leaders. With regard to Mr. Macron, I would say that I have a great deal of respect for the president. And we have a great deal of respect for France and French culture. We may be political adversaries, but we are partners in Europe. And we would also like to underscore that both of us love our countries, both of us work to make Europe stronger, and both of us agree that Europe needs strategic autonomy. In Hungary, when we speak of strategy, we mean three important things. We need a defense industry in Europe. There is no autonomy without that, and there's no autonomy without nuclear power, and there is no autonomy without being able to meet our own agricultural needs. So we are in favor of agricultural policy to support Europe and also nuclear power in Europe. And we are quite delighted to have the President here with us. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for welcoming me here in Budapest for this bilateral meeting and for enabling me to participate in the summit of the four Visegrad countries. We have met each other several times in the past. And I think this is because my concept of Europe, of course, it's based on the fact that we're attached to our countries, but we also respect one another. And as the Prime Minister has just said, we do have well-known political disagreements, but we have the will to work together for Europe and to be loyal partners. In that regard, we will be discussing what is the sovereignty of Europe. What does that mean? Europe of defense with shared capacities, and I'd like to thank Hungary for its engagement in the Takuba task force in Mali. This support of fighting against terrorism has been very useful, and we thank you for it. The Europe of defense, the Europe of space, we are both in favor of that. Europe investing in technology, Europe independent in regard to its energy needs. We've talked about low carbon energy and reducing the importation of gas from outside of Europe and therefore developing nuclear plants. We've talked about progress to be made in the coming months with regard to the digital expansion of our country. These are important points that the French presidency will be addressing. And I also hope that we will find agreement with regard to migration issues. There have been tensions in this regard. I think in the past weeks, and we've talked about this with our Polish friends as well, there has been pressure for us to rethink our future, to protect our external borders, and to find a way of cooperating more effectively among Europeans in this regard. As I mentioned myself in last week's press conference, we will also be talking about the importance of the rule of law in public debate. And I think that there will be interesting debates to be held, even though there may be some disagreements. We'll talk about media pluralism, for example. But I also believe in two things. First of all, the fact that we must respect each member state and understand how tensions arise and how through work and dialogue among member states and with institutions, especially the European Commission, but also European judges and so forth, we can find a path forward together, respecting one another and remaining true to our project for Europe. These were some of the comments I wanted to make before we get into any further details on these points. Belonging to Europe, recovery for Europe, and these two pillars go along with what I just mentioned, two important parts of our upcoming presidency. We will certainly be discussing this feeling of belonging to Europe and how we can encourage young people to belong to Europe. Recovery, because we have this question of the environmental transition, the rule of law, and we will have to launch economic recovery. We've seen that some countries are already starting to report very good economic results. So that is what I wanted to mention before we meet our other colleagues and talk about some of the great challenges that lie ahead in the coming months. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Dear Viktor, thank you very much for your welcome.
And we're listening there to French President